The observation deck of the Valterin Military Academy hung suspended 300 meters above the training grounds, and Professor Kelleth pressed all 4 of his eye stalks against the reinforced glass. Below, 27 cadets from 11 different species stood in perfect formation, waiting for the day's exercise to begin. 26 of them, anyway. The human was doing something with his boots. Is he tying them again? Kelleth's teaching assistant, a young Morvian named Kess, leaned forward with interest. That is the 3rd time this morning. 4th, Kelleth corrected, his mandibles clicking with irritation. He tied them before breakfast, after breakfast, before the morning briefing, and now this. Down on the training grounds, Cadet Marcus Webb finished with his laces and bounced on his toes a few times, apparently satisfied. He was unremarkable by human standards, Kelleth had been told. Average height, average build, with dark hair that stuck up in several directions despite apparent attempts to flatten it. He wore the standard-issue Academy training suit, which on him looked somehow more casual than on anyone else, as if he had just rolled out of bed and wandered onto a battlefield by accident. The head instructor, Commander Vrock, began his speech. His voice boomed across the training grounds, amplified by speakers embedded in the walls. Today, you will face the gauntlet of endurance. This exercise has been designed to test the absolute limits of your species' pain tolerance, physical capability, and mental fortitude. Several cadets shifted nervously. The gauntlet was legendary, feared by every student who had ever passed through the Academy's gates. It combined heat stress, cold immersion, electrical stimulation, pressure testing, and sensory deprivation in a carefully calibrated sequence. The medical staff stood ready with full trauma teams. They were always necessary. You will proceed one at a time, Vrock continued, his crest flaring red with authority. Each test will be adjusted to push your species to exactly 87% of your documented pain threshold. This ensures maximum training value while preventing permanent damage. Marcus raised his hand. Vrock's crest flickered with surprise. No one interrupted the briefing. Yes, Cadet Webb? Quick question, Marcus said, his tone conversational, as if he were asking about lunch plans. When you say 87% of our pain threshold, whose numbers are you using? Because I gotta be honest, humans are really bad at agreeing on that kind of thing. Kelleth's eye stalks quivered. Up in the observation deck, Kess made a note on her datapad. The human appears to be questioning the fundamental methodology. The human appears to be stalling, Kelleth muttered. Vrock's crest had gone from red to a confused orange. We use the standard Galactic medical database entries for each species. These have been compiled over 3 centuries of research. Right, sure, Marcus nodded, bouncing on his toes again. It's just that humans have this whole thing where we cannot decide if something hurts a lot or a little. We made these charts, these faces, with different expressions, you know? And we're supposed to point at which face matches our pain, but honestly, I've never been sure if I'm a crying face or just a frowning face, with extreme prejudice. A few cadets snickered. Vrock's crest went flat against his skull, a sign of extreme displeasure. The database is accurate, Cadet Webb. You will proceed when your turn comes. Cool, absolutely, Marcus agreed. Just wanted to check. The first cadet, a Thraxian named Bollux, stepped forward. The Thraxians were a proud warrior species, known for their stoic acceptance of pain and their impressive tolerance for physical damage. Bollux had scored in the top 10% of the class on every physical examination. His scales gleamed under the morning sun, as he approached the first station, the heat chamber. The temperature inside ramped up according to carefully programmed specifications. Through the observation glass, Kelleth watched Bolix's body temperature readings on the monitor. The Thraxian stood perfectly still as the heat climbed, his scales beginning to darken from the stress. At exactly 87% of the documented Thraxian pain threshold, the chamber doors opened. Bolix walked out, his breathing heavy but controlled. "Time to completion. 4 minutes, 17 seconds, Vrak announced. "Acceptable." One by one, the cadets proceeded through the gauntlet. The Yillian cadet made it through with barely a tremor, her crystalline-like biological structure providing natural heat dispersion. Wait, no, not crystalline, Kelleth corrected himself mentally, her silicon-based structure. The Corthan cadet struggled more visibly, his fur standing on end during the electrical stimulation phase, but he completed the course. Then it was Marcus's turn. The human walked up to the first station with his hands in his pockets. Actually, in his pockets. As if he were taking a stroll through a park, rather than approaching a test specifically designed to make him regret being born with nerve endings. "Cadet Webb," Vrak said, his voice tight, "remove your hands from your pockets and enter the heat chamber." "Oh, yeah, sorry." Marcus pulled his hands out and gave them a little shake, like he was preparing for something mildly inconvenient. He stepped into the chamber, and the doors sealed behind him. Kelleth leaned forward, all 4 eye stalks focused on the monitors. The heat began to rise. According to the database, humans had a surprisingly high pain tolerance for creatures with such soft, unprotected skin. Their ancestors had evolved under extreme environmental pressures, developing a nervous system that could distinguish between minor threats and major ones with remarkable precision. The temperature climbed. 20 degrees Celsius, 30, 40, 50. Inside the chamber, Marcus looked around with what appeared to be mild curiosity. He tilted his head, examining the walls as if considering a paint color for his quarters. 60 degrees, 70. Marcus scratched his nose. "This is within normal parameters," Kess said, checking her data pad. "Humans regularly survive temperatures in this range. Their sweating response is quite efficient." 80 degrees, 90. Marcus unbuttoned the top button of his training suit and rolled his shoulders. He appeared to be humming? Yes, the audio feed confirmed it. He was humming something melodic and entirely unconcerned. 100 degrees Celsius. "That is boiling water temperature," Kelleth said flatly. "Why is he not boiling?" "Human skin does not boil like water," Kess explained, though she sounded uncertain. "Their evaporative cooling system becomes extremely effective at high temperatures. However, this should still be causing significant discomfort." 120 degrees, 130. Marcus stopped humming and looked up at the observation window. He could not possibly see them through the reflective glass, but somehow his eyes found exactly the right spot. Then he smiled and gave a little wave. "He is mocking us," Kelleth said. "Perhaps he is simply maintaining morale," Kess suggested. "Nobody maintains morale like that. 147 degrees Celsius, exactly 87% of the human pain threshold according to the database." The chamber doors opened. Marcus walked out, his face slightly red and his hair definitely sticking up more than before, but otherwise completely fine. He was not limping, not gasping, not showing any signs of distress whatsoever. "Time to completion," Vrak said, and Kelleth could hear the confusion in his voice even through the speakers. 6 minutes, 3 seconds. That is actually longer than optimal." Most species exit as soon as possible. "Sorry about that," Marcus called up. "I was waiting for it to get uncomfortable. Are we starting the actual test soon?" The training ground went silent. "That was the test," Vrock said slowly. "Oh," Marcus looked genuinely surprised. "Huh, okay. What's next?" What was next was the cold immersion chamber. The cadet before Marcus, a Felian whose species came from a frozen moon, had emerged shivering and blue after 3 minutes. Marcus stepped into the chamber with the same casual confidence he had shown before. The temperature dropped rapidly. 0 degrees Celsius, -10, -20. Marcus crossed his arms and shifted his weight from foot to foot. "Little chilly," his voice came through the speakers. -30, -40. "Okay, yeah, this is definitely colder," Marcus acknowledged. He started doing small hops in place, a strange human behavior Keleth had seen before but never understood. Apparently, moving around helped them generate heat, -53 degrees Celsius. The doors opened. Marcus emerged with his lips slightly blue and his teeth chattering, but he was grinning. Now that was refreshing. "Do you guys have these chambers available for personal use? Because that would be amazing after a workout." Keleth made a strangled sound. Beside him, Kess was typing frantically on her datapad. "Professor, I am cross-referencing the database entries. The human pain threshold calculations may have been compiled from incomplete data." "What do you mean, incomplete?" "The entries were gathered from medical studies on Earth, but those studies were self-reported. The researchers asked humans to rate their pain on numerical scales." Keleth's eye stalks swiveled to stare at her. "You are telling me that our entire understanding of human pain tolerance is based on them telling us how much things hurt?" "Yes, Professor. And humans are notorious for understating danger, overstating capability, and generally having no accurate sense of their own limitations." "Also, yes, Professor." On the training grounds, Marcus was approaching the electrical stimulation station. This was typically the worst part of the gauntlet. Electrical current applied directly to the nervous system in controlled bursts, designed to simulate combat injuries without causing actual damage. The gauntlet system would deliver pulses at 87% of the human threshold. Marcus placed his hands on the contact points. The system activated. His entire body went rigid. His jaw clenched. Every muscle tensed simultaneously, and for a moment, Keleth thought they had finally found the human's limit. Then Marcus said through gritted teeth, "Okay, now we are talking. This is like that time I touched a fence on my uncle's farm." The electrical pulses continued. Marcus's body jerked and spasmed, but he did not remove his hands from the contact points. In fact, he appeared to be laughing. "Most species immediately break contact," Kess said, her voice filled with scientific fascination. "The human is voluntarily maintaining contact with a source of significant pain." "Wake it," Keleth demanded. "Why would anyone do that?" "I have no idea, Professor." The electrical stimulation reached its programmed endpoint. Marcus removed his hands, shook them out, and rotated his shoulders. "Phew! That will wake you up in the morning. What is the voltage on that thing?" Vrock looked down at his data pad. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally he said, "Moving on to pressure testing." The pressure chamber was designed to simulate extreme gravitational forces. Most species found it agonizing, a crushing weight that made every breath a struggle. The chamber would gradually increase pressure until reaching 87% of tolerance, then release. Marcus entered the chamber. The pressure began to build. His knees bent slightly. His breathing became more labored. The monitors showed his heart rate increasing, his blood pressure rising in response to the external pressure. "Finally," Kelleth said. "Finally, we see actual distress." The pressure continued to increase. Marcus dropped to one knee, then both knees. His hands pressed against the floor as the weight of 3 times normal gravity pressed down on him. "Adequate response," Vrak announced. "The human is performing as expected for his species." Then Marcus started doing push-ups. "What?" Kelleth said. "What is he doing?" "Those are a human exercise," Kess explained. "They lower and raise their body using only their arms. It is considered a basic physical fitness activity." "In 3 times gravity?" "Apparently so, Professor." Marcus completed 10 push-ups before the pressure released. He stood up, breathing hard but grinning. "Man, that is a great workout. Can I get a water break, or do we go straight to the next thing?" "No breaks in the gauntlet," Vrak said, but he sounded uncertain now. The final test was sensory deprivation. The cadet would be placed in a sealed tank, floating in temperature-neutral fluid, with no light, no sound, and no external stimuli whatsoever. Isolation drove most beings toward panic. The carefully calculated time limit pushed each species to the edge of psychological tolerance. Marcus climbed into the tank without hesitation. The lid closed. The monitors showed his vital signs steady and calm. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. "His heart rate is decreasing," Kess observed. "It is approaching resting levels. Impossible. The isolation should be causing stress." 20 minutes. 25. "Professor, I think he might be falling asleep." At 32 minutes, exactly 87% of the human threshold, the tank drained and opened. Marcus sat up slowly, blinking in the sudden light. "Oh, sorry. Did I doze off? That was super relaxing." Vrak stared at him. All across the training ground, instructors and observers stared. Even the other cadets, who had barely survived their own runs through the gauntlet, stared. "Cadet Webb," Vrak said carefully, "are you telling me that the sensory deprivation chamber put you to sleep?" "I mean, yeah. It was quiet, dark, and comfortable. That is literally nap conditions. Do I not pass if I fell asleep? Because that seems like a weird rule." Up in the observation deck, Kelleth's eye stalks had gone limp. He looked at Kess. She looked back at him. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. Finally, Kelleth spoke. "What does the database say about human pain tolerance exactly?" Kess pulled up the file. She read aloud. "Humans demonstrate moderate pain tolerance compared to galactic average. Classification, Category 4 out of 10. Notable weakness includes sensitivity to extreme temperatures and pressure. Psychological fragility noted during isolation testing. Recommendation: standard training protocols, acceptable with minor adjustments for soft tissue vulnerability." "Category 4, Kelleth repeated. "Yes, Professor." "That human just completed a Category 9, gauntlet without apparent distress." "Yes, Professor." "And he fell asleep during the psychological torture portion." "Yes, Professor." Kelleth's eye stalks quivered. "We need to revise the database." Down on the training grounds, Vrak was attempting to maintain order, but several cadets were protesting. A Dorthian with impressive combat scores was particularly vocal. "Commander, this is not fair. How are we supposed to compete with that? The human barely noticed the tests." "Yeah," another cadet chimed in. "He did push-ups in the pressure chamber." Marcus held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Hey, come on! Everyone did great. I'm sure you all found it just as easy." "We did not find it easy," the Dorothian shouted. "We found it agonizing. That is the point." "Oh," Marcus's face fell. "Oh man, I'm sorry. I did not realize. Was I supposed to be pretending it hurt?" The training ground erupted in chaos. Cadets were shouting. Instructors were trying to restore order, and Vrak's crest was cycling through colors so rapidly it was creating a strobing effect. Kelleth turned away from the window. "Kess, I want you to compile every piece of data we have on human pain tolerance, psychological limits, and physical capability. Cross-reference with actual observed behavior rather than self-reported data." "Yes, Professor. Should I prioritize this?" "Prioritize it? This is now your only assignment. Forget your thesis. Forget your other research. We have been operating under fundamentally flawed assumptions, and I want to know how flawed." "Right away, Professor." Kelleth took one last look at the training grounds, where Marcus was now trying to comfort the Dorothian cadet, who was having what appeared to be an existential crisis. The human seemed genuinely confused about why everyone was so upset. "Category 4, Kelleth muttered. "Moderate pain tolerance, psychological fragility." He had a terrible feeling that the humans had been lying on their medical questionnaires. Not intentionally, perhaps, but lying nonetheless, simply because they had no accurate idea of how unusual their capabilities actually were. This was going to be a very long semester. The Academy's medical database occupied 3 entire floors of the research wing, a vast library of biological information on every known species in the galactic community. Kelleth had spent the better part of 3 hours going through human entries, and with each file he opened, his confusion grew. "This cannot be correct," he said for the 17th time. Kess, working at an adjacent terminal, looked up. "Which part, Professor?" "All of it. Every part. Listen to this entry on human healing. Humans demonstrate adequate tissue regeneration within standard parameters. Minor wounds close within 7 to 10 planetary rotations. Major injuries require medical intervention and extended recovery periods." "That seems reasonable, Professor." "Reasonable? Reasonable? I watched Marcus walk into a wall during zero-gravity training last week, at full speed. He got a nosebleed, said, 'Ow, that was dumb,' and continued training. The bleeding stopped on its own within minutes." "Perhaps it was a minor injury?" "He hit the wall hard enough to leave a dent." Kess made a note. "I will add that to the discrepancy file." Kelleth moved to another entry. "What about this? Human cognitive function degrades significantly under stress. Panic responses common. Recommend avoiding high-pressure situations until proper conditioning achieved." "Does that sound like Marcus Webb to you?" "Well, he did fall asleep in the sensory deprivation tank." "Exactly. That is the opposite of psychological fragility. That is psychological invulnerability. What kind of creature finds complete isolation relaxing?" According to this entry, Kess said, reading from her own screen, "Humans evolved as social creatures who require regular interaction with others of their species. Prolonged isolation causes deterioration of mental health. So they need social interaction, but somehow solitary confinement is nap time. This makes no sense." The door to the research wing opened and Commander Vrak entered. His crest was still showing signs of color instability from the morning's events. "Professor Kelleth, I need to speak with you about the human." "Which aspect of the human's impossible behavior would you like to discuss, Commander?" Vrak pulled up a chair, his movements tired. "All of it. The Academy Board has questions, many questions. Specifically, They want to know if we need to redesign the entire gauntlet program. Because of one human? Because if our measurements are this far off for humans, they might be incorrect for other species as well. Vrak pulled out a datapad and scrolled through several screens. I have been reviewing historical records. Humans have been members of the galactic community for 63 years. In that time, they have consistently scored in moderate ranges on all physical and psychological assessments. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing that would suggest what we witness today. Then how do we explain Marcus Webb? That is what I am here to ask you, Professor. You are our specialist in xenobiology. You are supposed to understand these things. Calith's eye stalks drooped. Commander, I understand biology. What I witnessed today was not biology. That was some kind of cosmic joke at our expense. Professor, I am serious. So am I. Watch this. Calith pulled up a video file from that morning's training. This is from the electrical stimulation phase. Standard protocol, 87% of documented threshold. Watch Marcus's face. They watched. Marcus's body spasmed. His muscles locked. His teeth clenched. Every physical indicator suggested significant pain. And then he laughed. Why is he laughing? Vrak asked. I do not know. Is it a fear response? Some species laugh when frightened. I checked. Humans do sometimes laugh when nervous, but the physiological signs are different. This is genuine amusement. Vrak's crest flattened. He finds electrical shock amusing. Apparently so. What is wrong with his species? I am beginning to think that question has no good answer. Cass looked up from her terminal. Professor, I found something interesting in the historical records. Humans submitted their medical data for the Galactic database 71 years ago during their initial contact period. The surveys were completed by volunteers from their home planet. Yes, and? And humans have something they call adverse selection in volunteer studies. The humans who volunteer for medical research are not representative of their general population. They tend to be individuals with specific motivations. What kind of motivations? According to this note, many humans volunteer for medical studies because they need money. They participate in exchange for payment. The studies with the highest compensation tend to attract humans with the highest pain tolerance, because those studies involve more discomfort. Calith stared at her. Are you telling me that our entire medical database on humans is based on the responses of humans who volunteered for painful experiments because they needed money and had unusually high pain tolerance to begin with? It appears that way, yes, Professor. And we extrapolated from that sample to represent all humans? Yes, Professor. We are idiots. I would not phrase it quite that way, Professor, but there does appear to have been a methodological error. Vrak's crest had gone completely gray, a sign of deep distress. The board is going to ask how we missed this. What do I tell them? Tell them that humans are very, very good at accidentally misleading everyone around them, Calith said. Tell them that humans have no accurate sense of their own capabilities. Tell them that we should never, ever take self-reported data from humans at face value again. That seems unprofessional. Then tell them we will be revising our assessment protocols immediately and implementing direct observation studies to replace questionnaire-based data collection. That will take years. Yes, Commander, it will, because we have apparently spent the last 70 years operating under completely incorrect assumptions, and fixing that is going to require actual work. Vrak stood up, his crest flickering through several colors before settling on a resigned blue. Fine. prepare a proposal for the board. Include budget requirements and timeline. They will not be happy, but they cannot argue with what we saw today." After Vrock left, Kelleth turned back to his terminal. He pulled up Marcus's file and stared at the Humans Academy photo. Marcus grinned at the camera, his expression friendly and utterly unaware of the chaos he was causing simply by existing. "Kess, do we have any other humans enrolled in the academy?" "Checking," she typed rapidly. "Yes, Professor. 3 others. 2 in the engineering track, 1 in communications. Pull their training records. I want to see if they demonstrate similar anomalies." "Right away, Professor." Kelleth suspected he already knew what they would find. The engineering track included heavy equipment operation and exposure to industrial hazards. The communications track required long periods of isolation during deep space assignments. If those humans were anything like Marcus, their performance records would be full of subtle impossibilities that everyone had simply overlooked because the database said humans were supposed to be average. His terminal beeped with an incoming message. It was from Dr. Halleth, the Academy's chief medical officer. The message was short and to the point. "Professor Kelleth, I just reviewed this morning's medical scans from the Gauntlet. The human's stress hormone levels were elevated, but not critically so. His tissue damage was minimal. He shows no signs of psychological trauma. This should not be possible according to his species classification. Please advise, I am very concerned." Kelleth sent back a single-word response. "Same." Another message came in, this time from the Equipment Maintenance Division. "Professor, the heat chamber calibration appears to be functioning correctly, but the human cadet reported that he barely felt warm. Should we increase the maximum temperature threshold? Please confirm." Kelleth responded, "Absolutely not. The chamber is fine. The human is not." A third message arrived from the psychology department. "We would like to conduct additional testing on Cadet Webb to assess his responses to controlled stressors. Can we borrow him for an afternoon?" Kelleth seriously considered this. Then he imagined explaining to the psychology department that their carefully designed psychological assessments would probably result in the human taking a nap or asking for harder challenges. He sent back, "Denied. Do not test the human. You will only depress yourselves." Kess looked up from her research. "Professor, I have the other humans' files. You should see this." Kelleth walked over to her station. She had pulled up performance reviews for the 3 other human cadets. He scanned through them quickly. "Cadet Yuki Tanaka, engineering track. Notes state, demonstrates concerning disregard for standard safety protocols. Frequently works with equipment at higher loads than recommended. When cautioned, responded that she wanted to see what it could handle." End notes. Cadet James Okoye, engineering track. Notes state, shows unusual resilience to equipment failures. Survived a pressure suit malfunction during EVA training without panic. Later stated, the experience was exciting. Recommend psychological evaluation. End notes. Cadet Sophia Reeves, communications track. Notes state, volunteered for extended isolation posting on monitoring station Delta 7. Remained alone for 6 months beyond scheduled rotation because she was enjoying the quiet. Returned to academy, reluctant to engage in social activities again. End notes. Kelleth felt something very much like a headache beginning to form, which was impressive, considering his species did not technically have heads. "They are all like this." "It appears so, Professor. Every single human at this academy is demonstrating impossible capabilities, and we have been dismissing it as individual variation." "Yes, Professor." "What is their secret? How can an entire species be this way and not notice?" Kess pulled up another file. I may have found something relevant. There is a human saying, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger." It is attributed to a human philosopher from several centuries ago. That is absurd. Trauma damages organisms. It does not strengthen them. Unless you are human, apparently. Professor, look at this medical study from Earth. It documents something called post-traumatic growth. Some humans, after experiencing severe stress or injury, actually develop enhanced capabilities in response. That is the opposite of how biology works. For most species, yes. But humans evolved on a death world, Professor. Earth has predators, diseases, environmental hazards, and geological instability far exceeding galactic norms. Humans, who could not adapt to repeated trauma, did not survive to reproduce. The ones who did created a species that treats adversity as a training exercise. Kelleth sat down heavily. His eye stalks waved in distress. So what you are telling me is that humans have literally evolved to get stronger the more terrible things happen to them. In simplified terms, yes, Professor. And our training program, which is designed to push cadets to their limits, is actually just making the humans more capable. That does appear to be the implication, Professor. We are doomed. I would not go that far, Professor. Kess, we are training an entire generation of military officers. We are putting them through stress tests designed to prepare them for the worst possible combat scenarios. And the humans are treating it like casual exercise while getting stronger every single day. Yes, Professor. In 10 years, when these humans graduate and take command positions in the Galactic Fleet, they are going to be functionally invincible compared to everyone else. That seems like a good thing, Professor. If we ever face a serious threat, having humans on our side would be advantageous. Kelleth's eye stalks focused on her with intensity. And what if the humans decide they do not want to be on our side? Kess froze. Professor, that is a very dangerous line of thought. Is it? We just discovered that we have been categorically underestimating their species for 7 decades. We have been treating them as equals when they are, in fact, so far beyond us in certain capabilities that comparison becomes meaningless. Do you think they have not noticed? Do you think Marcus Webb does not realize that the tests we find agonizing are barely noticeable to him? He seemed genuinely confused this morning. Or he is a very good actor. Kelleth immediately regretted saying it. He held up a hand-equivalent appendage. No, disregard that. I am spiraling into paranoia. Marcus is not deceptive. Humans are not deceptive. They are just terrifyingly more capable than advertised. Should we inform the Galactic Council? And tell them what? That the friendly species we have been working with for 63 years might accidentally conquer us all if they ever get annoyed? That their pain tolerance is off the charts and their psychological resilience makes our best warriors look fragile? That we have been placing them in training scenarios designed to break them, and they have been politely pretending to try hard? Put that way, it does sound alarming, Professor. It is alarming. It is the most alarming thing I have encountered in 40 years of research. Kelleth forced himself to calm down. But Kess, here is what truly frightens me. In all my research today, in every file and record and study I examined, I found one consistent note about humans. What note, Professor? They are kind, almost universally, overwhelmingly kind. They help others. They protect the weak. They form bonds across species barriers more readily than any other known race. Every human at this academy has been noted for their supportive behavior toward struggling classmates. That seems positive, Professor. It is positive. It is the only thing keeping me from complete panic. Because a species that can withstand anything we throw at them, that gets stronger from adversity, that treats our worst nightmares as minor inconveniences, if that species were not kind, we would all be in very serious trouble. Kess considered this. So we are depending on human morality to protect us from human capability? Yes, and so far, it has worked perfectly. Humans have been nothing but helpful, cooperative, and genuinely enthusiastic partners in the galactic community. Then why are you worried, Professor? Because I just realized that we have no idea what happens if we make them angry. The research wing fell silent except for the quiet hum of equipment. Calith stared at his terminal, at the smiling face of Marcus Webb, and wondered what his ancestors would think if they knew their species had accidentally befriended what might be the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, simply because those creatures were too nice, to mention how easy everything was for them. His terminal beeped again, another message from Marcus himself. Hey, Professor Calith, just wanted to say thanks for setting up such an interesting training day. I learned a lot about the Academy's capabilities. Quick question, are there any advanced programs available? I would love to really challenge myself. Let me know. Thanks. Calith stared at the message for a long time. Then he very carefully closed his terminal and decided that some questions were better left unanswered until at least tomorrow. 3 weeks had passed since the Gauntlet incident, and Calith had developed what humans would call a nervous tic. Every time he saw Marcus in the hallway, his eye stalks twitched involuntarily. The human always smiled and waved, completely oblivious to the existential crisis he had caused. Currently, Calith sat in an emergency faculty meeting, surrounded by instructors from every department. The mood was tense. Commander Vrak stood at the front of the room, his crest shifting through various shades of concerned purple. "We have a problem," Vrak announced unnecessarily. "The tactical combat simulations begin next week, and we need to discuss the human situation." "What situation?" asked Professor Milvis from the weapons department. She was new, having transferred from a civilian university only 6 months ago. "I have reviewed Cadet Webb's scores. They are adequate, but not exceptional." Calith and several other instructors groaned simultaneously. "You have not seen him in practical applications, have you?" Calith asked. "No, I have only reviewed his written examinations and target practice scores." "His target practice scores are average because he gets bored and starts trying to shoot while looking the other direction," said Lieutenant Gremick, the marksmanship instructor. His voice carried the weight of someone who had witnessed something that violated his understanding of physical possibility. "Last week, he hit 7 targets over his shoulder using a mirror. When I asked why, he said, and I quote, 'I saw it in a movie once and wanted to know if it actually worked.'" Milvis's facial tendrils curled with skepticism. "That is impossible. I have video evidence. I watch it every night before sleep. I am still not convinced it happened." "The problem," Vrak continued, his voice strained, "is that we are about to place all cadets into live combat simulations using training weapons and real tactical scenarios. These exercises are dangerous. Cadets get injured, sometimes severely. The medical teams stand ready. Every year we lose at least 3 cadets to training accidents." "I fail to see how this relates to the human," Milvis said. "Because," Calith explained slowly, "we have no idea what happens when Marcus actually faces a real threat. Everything so far has been calibrated to push him to his limits, and he has not noticed. The combat simulations are different. They adapt in real time. They escalate until the cadet fails or retreats. So he will fail or retreat. What is the concern? The concern is that he might not. Keleth's eye stalks stood straight up in agitation. What if he cannot fail? What if the simulation keeps escalating and escalating, trying to find his breaking point, and there is no breaking point to find? The room fell silent. Finally, Professor Dax from the medical wing spoke up. His voice was quiet, but firm. I ran extensive scans after the gauntlet. Marcus's stress responses are functional. His pain receptors work normally. He felt everything we subjected him to. He simply has a completely different relationship with discomfort than we assumed possible. Explain, Vrock commanded. Humans have what they call a fight-or-flight response. When threatened, their bodies flood with chemicals that enhance performance. Most species have similar mechanisms, but humans have an additional factor. They can consciously override their survival instincts. They can look at a situation that is actively harming them and decide logically that the harm is acceptable if it achieves a goal. That is insane, someone muttered from the back row. That is humanity, Dax corrected. They evolved doing dangerous things because the alternative was starvation or death from exposure. Climbing cliffs to reach food. Swimming in waters with predators to catch fish. Running for hours in extreme heat to chase prey until it collapsed. Their entire evolutionary history is a series of decisions to endure terrible things because not enduring them was worse. So what do we do? Vrock asked. Cancel the combat simulations? Absolutely not, Milvus interjected. We cannot change the entire program because one cadet might perform exceptionally well. That is absurd. You still do not understand, Gremick said. This is not about exceptional performance. Watch. He pulled up a video file and projected it on the main screen. This is from zero-gravity combat training, 2 days ago. The video showed the interior of the training sphere, a massive chamber where cadets practiced three-dimensional maneuvering in zero gravity. It was disorienting for most species, requiring weeks of adaptation to overcome nausea and spatial confusion. Marcus floated in the center, spinning slowly. He looked relaxed, almost peaceful. This was his first session in zero gravity, Gremick narrated. Most cadets vomit within 30 seconds. He is about to face multiple opponents in a capture-the-flag scenario. On screen, 5 other cadets appeared from different entry points. They were larger species, physically stronger, with more experience in zero-gravity environments. They moved with coordinated precision, clearly having trained together. Marcus spotted them. His expression shifted from relaxed to something else, something focused. He smiled, but it was different from his usual friendly grin. This smile had teeth. "Oh no," Keleth whispered. "I have seen that expression before, on predators, right before they hunt." The 5 cadets converged on Marcus from multiple angles, a classic pincer maneuver. Marcus waited until the last possible second, then pushed off a wall with his feet, launching himself directly at the largest opponent. He moved faster than should have been possible from a standing push. The collision looked painful. It was, for the other cadet. Marcus grabbed the cadet's training harness mid-flight, used the momentum to spin them both around, and launched the unfortunate opponent directly into 2 of his teammates. All 3 went tumbling in different directions, completely disoriented. The remaining 2 opponents hesitated. Fatal mistake. Marcus ricocheted off another wall, building speed with each bounce, moving through 3 dimensions like he had been born in zero gravity. He reached the first hesitant opponent, tapped him on the shoulder, hard enough to send him spinning, then was already gone, moving toward the last opponent. This one was smart. He tried to flee. Marcus followed, and the chase would have been comical if it were not so terrifying. The opponent zigged and zagged, using every evasive maneuver taught at the academy. Marcus matched every move, getting closer with each second, until finally he just reached out and grabbed the opponent's ankle. "Tag," Marcus said cheerfully. "You are out." Then, while still holding the opponent's ankle, Marcus oriented himself, calculated angles that should have required advanced mathematics, and threw the opponent directly into the goal zone with perfect accuracy. "Wrong team's goal," Marcus called out. "Sorry, still learning." The simulation ended. Marcus had single-handedly neutralized 5 opponents and accidentally scored for the wrong team, all in under 90 seconds. The faculty meeting room remained silent as the video ended. "He apologized for winning wrong," someone said faintly. "That is what concerns me most," Gremick replied. "He does not understand how abnormal this is. To him, this is just playing a game. He has no context for how impossible his performance is." "Has anyone told him?" Milvis asked. "We tried," Vrock said. "He thinks we are being nice. He thinks we are encouraging him the way instructors encourage struggling students. He has no frame of reference for genuine shock." Kelleth's terminal chimed. He glanced at it and felt his eye stalks droop. "The combat simulations have been randomized and assigned. Marcus has been placed in Squad 7. "What is Squad 7's scenario?" Vrock asked. Kelleth checked, then checked again, hoping he had misread. "Urban warfare, hostage rescue, multiple hostile combatants, limited ammunition, high civilian casualty risk. Difficulty level? Omega class, reserved for final-year cadets." Every instructor in the room turned to stare at Vrock. His crest had gone completely white. "That is," he said carefully, "an unfortunate computer randomization." "We could reassign him," Dax suggested. "On what grounds? We cannot tell him he is too capable for the standard scenario. That would require explaining how we know, which would require admitting we have been testing him with equipment he barely noticed. So we let him face an Omega-class scenario in his first semester. We monitor very carefully and intervene if necessary," Vrock decided. "How bad could it possibly go?" Kelleth made a note to include that quote in his eventual resignation letter. The urban warfare simulation occupied an entire wing of the Academy's training complex. Realistic building facades, destructible environments, civilian holograms, enemy combatants played by advanced androids armed with training weapons that hurt quite a bit, but did not cause permanent damage. Squad 7 consisted of 6 cadets, including Marcus. The team leader was Vex, a Corthan with an impressive tactical record. The others were solid students, competent but not exceptional. Together, they were expected to struggle significantly with an Omega-class scenario. Together, they were expected to fail and learn valuable lessons about teamwork and limitations. What no one expected was Marcus volunteering to be point. "I will take lead," he said during the pre-mission briefing. "I am pretty good at noticing things." Vex's fur rippled with uncertainty. "Cadet Webb, the point position is extremely dangerous. You will be first through doors, first to encounter enemies, first to trigger traps." "Sounds good," Marcus agreed cheerfully. "I like being first. It is exciting. You understand that training weapons still hurt?" "Oh, yeah. I got shot during marksmanship practice last week. Stung like crazy." Marcus rolled his shoulder, remembering. Definitely wanted to avoid that happening again, but if it does, no big deal. Vex looked at the other squad members, who shrugged. None of them wanted point position. Very well, Cadet Webb. Try not to get immediately eliminated. They entered the simulation zone. The scenario briefing appeared on their helmet displays. Hostile forces had taken over a residential sector. 12 hostages held in various locations, estimated 20 to 30 enemy combatants. Mission success required rescuing at least 8 hostages with minimal civilian casualties. The buildings loomed around them, shadows providing countless ambush points. Civilian holograms wandered past, oblivious to the danger, adding confusion to the environment. Marcus took point, his training rifle held in a ready position. He moved forward with steady confidence, head turning to scan corners and windows. "Contact," he whispered into the squad channel. 2 hostiles, second-floor window, northeast corner. Vex checked his scanner. "I do not see anything. They are behind a curtain. One just moved it slightly to peek out." "How can you possibly—" Marcus proved his point by shooting both hostiles before they could react. The training rounds hit with perfect accuracy. The android combatants sparked and went limp, eliminated from the scenario. "Huh," Marcus said. "Guess we are starting loud. Move up, people." What followed was less a tactical operation and more a natural disaster with human-shaped epicenter. Marcus moved through the simulation like water flowing downhill, taking the path of least resistance, but somehow ending up exactly where he needed to be. He seemed to have a sixth sense for enemy positions, calling out contacts seconds before they appeared. When combat erupted, he moved with efficiency that looked casual but devastated everything in his path. 3 hostiles, ground floor, behind the blue door, Marcus reported. "How do you know?" Vex demanded. "I can hear them breathing." "Through a door? Through combat noise? That is impossible." Marcus kicked the door open and eliminated all 3 hostiles in rapid succession. "Weird. Must have good ears." He did not have good ears. He had human ears, which meant he had evolved to detect subtle sounds in noisy environments because missing those sounds meant becoming something else's dinner. But Marcus did not know that was unusual. The squad advanced, and with each encounter, their confidence grew. Marcus was not just competent. He was supernatural. He predicted enemy movements, found hidden routes, spotted traps before anyone else even suspected danger. "Cadet Webb," Vex said during a brief pause, "your performance is extraordinary." "Thanks. You are doing great, too," Marcus replied, completely missing the subtext. They rescued the first 3 hostages without incident. Then the simulation adapted. The enemy numbers increased. Ambushes became more sophisticated. The civilian hologram density ramped up, making target identification difficult. The scenario was actively trying to overwhelm them. Marcus noticed. "Hey, is it just me, or are there way more bad guys than the briefing mentioned?" "The simulation adapts to trainee performance," Vex explained. "It is supposed to find our limits." "Oh, cool! So we must be doing really well." They were doing impossibly well, which meant the scenario was becoming impossibly difficult. 20 enemy combatants became 30. 30 became 40. The squad found themselves pinned down in a building, surrounded on all sides, with 4 rescued hostages and dwindling ammunition. "We need to retreat," one squad member said. "This is too much." "We cannot," Vex replied. "The hostages will not survive if we leave." Marcus checked his ammunition counter. 5 rounds left. He looked at the tactical display showing enemy positions completely surrounding their location. Then he smiled that particular smile again. "I have an idea," he said. "It is probably stupid, but it might work." "What kind of idea?" Vex asked cautiously. "The building next door has a window about 20 meters away. If I could jump to it, I could flank them from an unexpected angle." Everyone stared at him. "Cadet Webb, that is a 20-meter gap between buildings, in urban terrain, no safety equipment." "Yeah, I know. Probably stupid, right?" Marcus was already moving toward the window. "But I did track and field in school. Long jump was my thing. 20 meters is a stretch, but I bet I can make it if I get a good running start." "Absolutely not," Vex commanded. "That is suicidal." Marcus paused. "Is it, though? I mean, worst case, I miss and eliminate myself from the simulation. Best case, I make it and create an opening for you guys to escape with the hostages. Mathematically, it is worth trying." "That is not how tactical decisions work." But Marcus was already backing up, measuring his approach. "Tell my story," he said dramatically. Then he ran. His footsteps thundered across the floor. 3 strides, 5, 7. He hit the window at full speed, glass shattering around him as he launched himself into empty space 20 meters above ground level. Time seemed to slow. Every instructor watching from the observation deck stopped breathing. This was it. This was where the human's confidence finally exceeded his capability. This was where reality reasserted itself and taught Marcus Webb that some things were actually impossible. Marcus sailed through the air. His trajectory was perfect. His form was excellent. His expression was absolutely delighted. He crashed through the window of the opposite building, rolled on impact, came up running, and immediately eliminated 3 enemy combatants who had been watching the squad's original position. "Made it!" he called cheerfully over the comm. "Vex, move now while they are confused." The squad extracted with all 4 hostages, while Marcus conducted what could only be described as a one-person war against 25 enemy androids. He did not have enough ammunition for 25 targets, so he improvised, using furniture as weapons, throwing objects to create distractions, at one point literally tackling an android through a wall. When the simulation ended, Squad 7 had rescued 11 of 12 hostages, eliminated 43 enemy combatants, and suffered 0 casualties. Marcus had personally accounted for 38 of those eliminations. The scenario's AI assessment flashed on every squad member's display. Exceptional performance. Difficulty exceeded parameters. Error in threat assessment. Marcus read his display and frowned. Error in threat assessment? Does that mean I did something wrong? In the observation deck, Kelleth watched instructors from every department simply stare at the monitors in silence. Someone had started crying. Kelleth was not sure who, and he did not care to find out. Commander Vrock's crest had achieved a color Kelleth had never seen before. Something between purple and gray and absolute resignation. "He jumped between buildings," someone whispered. "He jumped between buildings," someone else confirmed. "He should not have made that jump." "But he did." "He should not have survived the scenario." "But he did." "What do we do?" Kelleth stood up slowly. His eye stalks were trembling. "We accept reality. Humans are not Category 4. They are not Category 9. I am not sure we have an accurate category for what they are." "So what do we tell the Galactic Council?" Vrock asked. "We tell them the truth. We made a mistake 70 years ago when we assessed humanity based on incomplete data. We have been training them as equals, which has inadvertently created the most dangerous military force in known space, and they have no idea. They really do not know? Watch. Kelleth pulled up a live feed from the simulation debrief room where Squad 7 was being congratulated. Marcus looked genuinely surprised by all the attention. "I just did what seemed right," he was saying. "Everyone worked together great. Vex's tactical calls were perfect, and the others covered the hostages really well. Team effort." He believed it. He genuinely believed that jumping between buildings was a normal tactical decision that anyone might make. "That," Kelleth said quietly, "is what makes them truly terrifying. Not their capabilities, not their resilience, but their complete inability to recognize how exceptional they are. They think they are average. They think anyone could do what they do if they just tried hard enough." "Is that not admirable?" Kess asked from her workstation. "Admirable? Yes. Terrifying? Also yes, because it means they are not showing off. They are not trying to dominate. They are genuinely attempting to fit in, to be team players, to meet the minimum standards. This is Marcus Webb trying to be adequate." The room absorbed this information with varying levels of horror. What happens when we ask them to be exceptional? Professor Dax voiced the question everyone was thinking. No one had an answer. Down in the simulation complex, Marcus was helping clean up the training equipment, chatting with his squad mates about what they could improve next time. He laughed at something Vex said, his expression open and friendly. Kelleth made a decision. "We do not tell Marcus or any of the other humans about our assessment errors. We continue training them alongside other species. We treat them as equals publicly while privately adjusting our expectations and safety protocols." "Why the secrecy?" Milvis asked. "Because if we tell them they are exceptional, one of two things will happen. Either they will not believe us and think we are mocking them, which will damage their confidence, or they will believe us and start holding back to avoid making others feel inadequate, which defeats the purpose of training them properly. So we lie? We manage information carefully," Kelleth corrected. "For their benefit and ours." Vrock nodded slowly. "Agreed, but we need new protocols. If Marcus represents typical human capability under stress, we need to prepare for the possibility of more humans entering military service. They will need specialized training programs." "Specialized how?" "Harder. Much, much harder. If an Omega-class scenario is too easy, we need to develop something beyond Omega." "We do not have anything beyond Omega, Commander. Omega-class is designed to be nearly impossible." "Then we will create something impossible and see how close humans get to succeeding." Kelleth felt his eye stalks droop again. "This is going to be a very long career." 6 months later, Marcus Webb graduated at the top of his class. His final scores were exceptional, but not unbelievably so, carefully modulated by instructors who had learned to judge him on a completely different scale than other cadets. At the graduation ceremony, Marcus stood on stage and gave a short speech about perseverance and teamwork. He thanked his instructors for their patience with a slow learner like himself, which caused several faculty members to develop sudden coughing fits. After the ceremony, Kelleth found Marcus alone, looking at the Academy Memorial Wall where names of distinguished graduates were carved. "Cadet Webb," Kelleth said. "Or should I say, Lieutenant Webb now?" Marcus turned and smiled. "Professor Kelleth, thank you for everything. I learned so much here." "Did you enjoy your time at the Academy?" "Absolutely. It was challenging and fun." "Well, mostly fun. Some parts were definitely challenging." Keleth's eye stalks quivered. Which parts did you find challenging? Oh, the academic coursework. Lots of memorization. I am not great with memorizing alien species names and their social structures. Give me a physical challenge any day. The physical challenges were easy for you? I mean, not easy, but yeah, pretty manageable. Is that okay to say? I do not want to sound arrogant. No, Lieutenant, that is fine to say. Very fine indeed. Marcus looked relieved. Good. I always worry I am not taking things seriously enough. Some of the other cadets seem to really struggle with the training, and I felt bad that I could not relate. You have a gift for understatement, Lieutenant Webb. Thanks, I think. Marcus paused. Professor, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I will do okay out there, in actual service? The training was one thing, but real missions are different. People are depending on me. What if I am not ready? Keleth looked at this human, this impossibly capable creature who had rewritten the Academy's understanding of physical and psychological limits, who had accidentally caused 3 senior instructors to retire early, and 2 complete curriculum redesigns, who had jumped between buildings because it seemed tactically sound, and who was worried that he might not be good enough. Lieutenant Webb, Keleth said carefully, I suspect you will do just fine. Really? Really. In fact, I predict you will exceed all expectations. That is really nice of you to say, Professor. I am not being nice, Lieutenant. I am being accurate. Marcus smiled that friendly, open smile that made him look like the most harmless being in the galaxy. Well, I will try my best. That is all anyone can ask, right? Right, Keleth agreed, though privately he thought that Marcus Webb's best might accidentally result in humanity dominating the entire galactic military structure within a generation. After Marcus left, Keleth returned to his office and opened his personal files. He had been keeping detailed notes on human capabilities, observations that would eventually form the foundation of a completely revised assessment system. His final entry for the day read, Humanity remains the most dangerous species in known space precisely because they do not realize it. Their kindness and humility are genuine. Their desire to cooperate and contribute is sincere. They genuinely want to be helpful members of the galactic community. This makes them trustworthy allies and terrifying potential adversaries. Recommendation: treat humans extremely well. They respond to kindness with loyalty, to friendship with devotion, to challenge with determination. They are not invincible, but they are as close to it as any carbon-based life form has right to be. Above all, never, ever make them angry. We still have no idea what happens then, and I would very much like to keep it that way. He saved the file, encrypted it with his highest security protocols, and leaned back in his chair. Somewhere in the galaxy, Marcus Webb was probably getting ready for his first assignment, tying his boots for the 7th time and wondering if he remembered to pack enough socks. Keleth's eye stalks twisted into what might have been a smile, if he had been capable of smiling. Humanity had no idea what they were, and somehow that made them even more remarkable. The universe would adapt to them eventually, or they would adapt it to themselves. Either way, it was going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. Keleth pulled up the admission files for next semester's incoming class. 3 more humans. He began making notes on equipment modifications and safety protocol adjustments. It was going to be a very interesting year.